everything. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Our parasha, Parashat Phinehas, and here we are, let's say, seeing something that is really a big lesson for each one of us. A guy named Phinehas, nobody knows about him. We don't hear anything about him till now. The last parsha, this guy gets up and does a thing which is on the surface, if we take everything out, murdering one of the leaders of Am Israel, one of the leaders of the tribe of Shimon. And it's amazing what's happening here. From one side, you see Moshe Rabbeinu and all the others, the Kohanim, all the great people of the nation standing there and doing nothing. Not only doing nothing, they're crying. Why don't you do anything? And Phinehas gets up and does what he does. And by the way, they say that he asked Moshe Rabbeinu, what's happening here? Said, you have to kill him. There is a halacha that somebody does a thing like this, a thing of how do you say, jealousy, or how do you call it, on a kanaut. In this level, you kill him. This is a chilul Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu was answering him, yeah, you're right. You said it, you do it. What does it mean? So the Gemara tells us this is the halacha, it's the law, but you don't teach it. Halacha ve'en morim kach. What's going on here? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it allowed? Is it a mitzvah or is it a sin? And what's going on here? If it is a mitzvah, why shouldn't I teach it? Why shouldn't I tell people to do it? And if it's not a mitzvah, so it's not allowed. How can it be that he does what he does? But we see that it is a mitzvah, because what is God doing? God is giving him
what's the mitzvah?
An unbelievable reward. The Torah tells us, 1 minute, the Torah tells us that Phinehas, look what the Torah is saying us in Phinehas. This is something that really very hard to understand. 1 minute, Phinehas.
Won't you make it louder?
I can't.
וידבר השם אל משה לאמור, פנחס בן אלעזר בן אהרון הכהן השיב את חמתי מעל בני ישראל בקנאו את קנאתי בתוכם ולא כיליתי את בני ישראל בקנאתי. What Phinehas did, he was jealous for me. He did this thing in Am Israel, in the middle, in front of everybody, and because of this I didn't finish off with Am Israel. In other words, he saved Am Israel. So it's very clear that Phinehas did a good thing, because there was a plague. The people were dying because of what they did with the Midianite and the Moabite, whatever. And what's happening here is that what he did saved. It stopped the Magifah. It stopped the plague. So is it good or bad? Certainly good. But then, on top of this, לכן אמור הנני נותן לו את בריתי שלם. I'm giving him the covenant of peace. And this is 1 minute. Okay, giving a reward, giving whatever you want, but a covenant of peace for somebody who did an act of war, an act of murder, killing, you're giving him a reward of peace? What has murder to do with peace? It's the opposite of peace. That's what we think. And this is how shallow we are. This is how we look at things from the outside and don't look at it in a proper way. Because sometimes in order to achieve peace, you need to go to war. Because without the war, with the evil, with the bad, you will not have peace. In other words, sometimes even killing somebody, which is like, looks from the outside like, this is a killer. No, this is a peacemaker. And this was Phinehas. And now we have to understand what's going on here. Phinehas is doing a thing that is really a suicide. Think about it. He is going alone in the middle of the tribe of Shimon, killing one of their leaders in front of everybody, and nothing happens to him. Definitely, when Phinehas did what he did, he knew that surviving this is, let's say, no chance. This is suicide. But still, he did it. And it's exactly, if you want to compare it, Avraham Avinu being thrown to the fire the normal thing would be, he would be burned and die. But he was saved because what he did was purely for God. When his cousin, or I think his cousin was, he was thrown into the fire, he burned, he died. So now we realize that what Phinehas did is purely for God. And that's what Or HaChaim HaKadosh says. He says, in order to get to the level of Phinehas, you need three things. You need to do it purely for God. And you need to do it in front of everybody. One minute. I want to find if I have the... says אור החיים הקדוש. ואמר שהייתה באמצעות ג' דברים. Three things. The first one, if he was jealous for the honor of God himself, and he endangered himself, he almost committed suicide. והוא אמרו בקנאו בכינוי. Secondly, it was for me, for my honor, like God is saying, and not for anything else. No, nothing. A full, complete, 100% mitzvah for God. And the third thing, as we said, it wasn't something that was done hiding. It was done in front of everybody, in public. And who can get to this level? So now we understand why this is an halacha, but you're not allowed to teach it, because nobody can get to that level. And by the way, maybe this is the idea why Moshe Rabbeinu is doing nothing, because he was married to a Midianite, and this guy comes to a Midianite and says, you are married to a Midianite, so why shouldn't I do what I do with a Midianite? And the truth is that, of course, it's not true, because the wife of Moshe Rabbeinu was converted, she's Jewish 100%, etc., etc., etc. But the idea still, there is a point, something that connects him with what's happening. In other words, it cannot be pure. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu can, but from the outside, when we look at it, it wouldn't look for us pure. Yeah, because he was married to a Midianite, so he killed Phinehas. So that's the reason he's telling Phinehas, you do it. You said it, you do it. But from the other point of view, what is the Torah trying to tell us? If it is a halacha and you're not moringa, if we cannot get to the level of Phinehas, and that's why you're not allowed to teach this halacha, because, for example, if Phinehas would have killed him 1 second after he finished what he did with the Midianite, he would have been considered a killer, a rotzeach. He had to do it in the action itself, because otherwise, that's not a mitzvah, it's a sin. And he did it in the middle when they were connected, and then took them out, and everybody saw it. And they say that 12 miracles happened to him in order for him to do this thing and survive it. So we realize now that what he did was really 100% for God. He didn't think about himself for a minute. Who can get to that level? So again, what does this say to us? Very simple. Each one of us has to understand that when we see things, we have to act. We cannot bury our face in the earth. I didn't see it. What is Phinehas? Phinehas has got a small yud. Normally, when you write, and by the way, run the internet, Phinehas without a yud, with the yud, it will show you a red mark that you did a mistake, because Phinehas is written without a yud. Wrong. The Torah writes Phinehas, and that's where the name comes from, with the yud. The point is the yud is small, so you don't see it. So why is the yud small? A lot of explanation, but one of them is very simple. Phinehas is teaching us a big lesson. The small yud is like, you can say, Yehudi, a Jew. Yud is also one of the first letters of one of the names of God. In other words, in each one of us, there is an neshama. There is the Yehudi inside. Sometimes it's small, we don't see it, but it's there. And this is what Phinehas is teaching us. When the time comes, each one of us can be Phinehas. Each one of us can raise up and do this heroic thing and fight for God and do the right thing, the right moment, in the right place. And this is exactly what we learn from Phinehas. A lot of times we see things and we go by. Okay, it's life. We get used to things. We see people that something that are so corrupted, so distorted, and we still go on and accept it. Phinehas didn't accept it. And this is what God is telling us. You also, each one of us should not accept it. Of course, chas v'shalom, you don't kill nobody. But the thing is, killing and living in the spiritual point of view is very simple. Living in our tradition is doing the mitzvahs. Tzaddikim, gam bemotam korim chaim. A tzaddik, even when he dies, goes from this world, he is considered alive. Because real life is Torah. But a Rasha, bechayav karume, a Rasha that doesn't keep the Torah, that is corrupt and goes in a bad way, he is considered dead even when he alive, because this is not living. Because real living leads you to Olam Haba. Otherwise, you're dead. So that's the meaning of life and death. And this is what we're talking about. And by the way, one of the interesting explanations, says Or Chaim HaKadosh, that by this act, he also saved Zimri ben Salu, this guy from Shevet Shimon that did the deed, that which he killed him. But with killing him, he made him do kapara on the sin he did. And he won his Olam Haba back. Otherwise, he would have lost his Olam Haba. So in other words, Phinehas even saved the guy he killed physically, but he saved him spiritually, which is more important. But that's again not the issue. The issue is what should we do. And as we said, we see things, how do we act? For example, when the corona started and we started going with mask in shul, and you had to go with mask in shul, and we could daven in a certain way, comes this guy, which is a drug addict, we all know him, and he always comes and disturbs, and he stands up in the middle of the bima, in the middle of the tefillah, no mask on his face, nothing, and he's starting shouting. And somebody told him, another one told him, please go away, you haven't got a mask, leave the place, you're not allowed to stay. But he didn't care. Now, what do? You go and fight with him? This is corona, he can infect you. This is a disease that we all know, touching, breathing, and spitting, of course, you can get the disease. And this was before we had the vaccine. So what do? This episode connected me to what Phinehas did. I'm not saying what we should have done or not done, but this is exactly the point. What do you do when something like this happens? Do you stay apathic and do nothing? Or you do something? This is so important to understand. When we look at those things, for example, I want to find it. It's written there in the Gemara. Phinehas ben Lazar ben Aaron HaKohen. So why do they tell us that Phinehas is the son of Elazar and the grandson of Aaron HaKohen? Says Rashi, לפי שהיו השבטים מבזים אותו, because the tribes were abusing him. הראיתם, did you see, ben Puti זה, this the son of Oved Elilim, of an idol worshipper, שפיתם אבי אמו, that his grandfather was worshipping idols and sacrificing sacrifices to idols, who he killed a president of a tribe in Israel. And that's why the Torah tells us that he is not because from his mother's side, she was one of the daughters of Yitro. But from the father's side, he was from Aaron HaKohen and from Elazar, which is a good dynasty. Tell us, no, it's not only this side, but the Noam Elimelech, Rebbe Elimelech Mizhans, he says an unbelievable thing. He said they didn't abuse him. They were ashamed that, and that's what they said. How could it be that this guy that on one side is a grandson of idol worshiper does the right thing, and we stand and did nothing? We This student did nothing. How can it be? In other words, he, with his deed, he, let's say, awakened them. He gave them the awakening call. That, get up. How can you see something wrong like this and do nothing? In other words, they were ashamed. They didn't do anything. In other words, what Phinehas did, it's not only saved Am Israel, he also encouraged them to do the right thing next time, maybe. And this is exactly what we have to understand. When we stand for the Torah, when we stand for God, even if it's not convenient, if we're afraid that are going to abuse us, to mock us, to laugh at us, maybe even worse, we don't realize that a lot of times when we do the right thing, people will realize how wrong they are and will also do the right thing. The influence of the act is not only on you, it's only or also on your friends, on the society. We look around and we see a lot of wrongs. What do we do about it? Things that are against the written Torah, with no translation, no special explanation, simply written in the Torah, they're not allowed. And people are making them not only allowed, but a source of pride. And it becomes so normal that those who don't talk in favor of it are considered wrong. And nobody dares to speak against it because people will laugh at it. This is exactly what happened here with Phinehas. This guy was going to do an unbelievable thing in front of everybody. I don't know how to call it, adultery, but certainly committing an act with a Madianite, which is involved also with idol worshipping. And nobody does anything. Only one guy gets up. And because he gets up, look what he got. ונתתי לו את בריתי שלום. He gets the covenant of peace. And they say, והייתה לו ולזרעו אחריו ברית כהונת עולם. He got a reward that his children, all the generations, are going to be Kohanim Gdolim. Unbelievable. For one thing he did. But sometimes it's only one thing that is required. Because when you get up and do the right thing, sometimes people that are there, because let's talk the truth. If we check people, if they want the Torah here in Eretz Israel, or if they don't want the Torah, if they want tradition or don't want tradition, believe me, the majority of the people in Israel want the tradition. And there are traditions. Look when you go to a hotel, for example, on holiday, and there are a lot of Israelis, and you go to shul, especially on Shabbos, and the shul is full with the same people that you saw a few minutes ago, not exactly keeping Shabbos in the right way, but they come to shul. They want to be a part of the tradition. And this is the majority. So the minority is telling us, doing a lot of noise, how they say in the Gemara, Istera balagina kish kish karya. When you take a kupa, when you're at staka box, and you put one coin in it or two coins, and you shake it, it does a lot of noise. If it's full, it's hardly does noise. And this is exactly what's happening here. A lot of noise for nothing. The problem is that the people are frightened from this noise. And they think, who knows who is behind it? Nothing is behind it. And if we dare and stand up for our ideals, for the Torah, you will see the change. You will see people coming with us. What can we say when we look around and see what's happening? And unfortunately, a lot of times we are either afraid or ashamed to say something. It's the same way is with the rechilot. We're talking badly on people. Also, it becomes something that is so regular that when you be with friends and they talk badly about somebody, either you participate and you listen and sometimes even put your own jam on it, your own things on it. But how many people get up and say, stop, let's stop talking Lashon Hara, let's stop talking rechilot, let's stop gossip. How many people do it? And we all know it's wrong to gossip. That's only, there are a lot of samples. So I'm not saying you're not going to be saint tomorrow. But this is exactly what Phinehas is trying to tell us. And there are a lot of other things in our parsha. They're talking about the spirit. What is the right spirit? Moshe Rabbeinu is asking for a leader that has a spirit of the people. And God is telling him about the spirit. And I'm not going to go in it. We haven't got a lot of time to talk about everything. But definitely, you need the right spirit and you have to hold your spirit. See, you need somebody. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is asking. That's what God telling him. Somebody who leads the people with the same spirit. What does it mean, the same spirit? Look around. Our leaders, do they have an agenda? Do they go in the ideals that they were standing for before the election? Or do they change their opinion every once in a while because they want the seat? They want the position. I always tell the story. Years ago, we've been in a hotel in Jerusalem. And on Shabbos, there was this guide that came and to show us around, walking, a walk tour on Shabbos. And she came with a dog. And I always remember this. We're going out of the hotel, and the dog runs in front of us. And if somebody looks from the outside, it looks like the dog is leading. Alevai God. The dog is leading all the people, and the guide is a part of the group. But the real truth was, if you looked very carefully, you saw that every time the dog was looking backwards to see where his owner, where the guide is going, and he was changing his route according to the guide. In other words, who was leading? Not the dog, the guide. But this dog is exactly the sample. Pnei hador ki pnei hageret. Our sages say, Pnei hador, the face of the generation, is like the face of a dog. What does it mean? Our leaders, they look around. They do what the people want. You know, Shaul HaMelech, great guy, a tzaddik. He lost the crown. You know why? Because he listened to the people. And Shmuel HaNavi tells him, this is why you lose your position, your crown. God told you to kill everybody. Also the cattle. And what do I hear? It says, man, what do I hear? I hear the cattle. Why are they alive? So he says, the people, I think, the people. But God talked to you and told you. You listen to the people. You lose your crown. Unbelievable. And what's happening today? The same thing. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu is asking. This, let's say, this ideal leader. There was nobody like Moshe Rabbeinu. We're all wishing that we'll get somebody close to Moshe Rabbeinu. And unfortunately, we have to understand, they're not bad people. They're all good people. The point is the environment, the influence. And it's very hard to fight against the influence and the society. It's very easy to be tempted. And this is when we have to remember Phinehas. Even if everybody's standing there, And everybody means everybody. All the great people of Am Israel standing and doing nothing, crying. Okay, gets this guy and does this deed. This heroic thing. This is the small yud that each one of us got inside. Each one of us, put it in your mind. We all got the small yud. We all have the potential. We have just to take it out and use it. I'm wishing all of us to learn the lesson from our parsha and taking out the small yud and talk to people the truth, even if sometimes we are ashamed. We are worried that people will laugh at us, will tell that are primitive, but we know the truth. And if we go in that way of the truth, look at the reward. ונתתי לו את בריתי שלום. All the best. Hopefully, we will try and go in the tracks of Phinehas. Yom Tov.
Thanks, Gadi.
You're welcome.